Welcome, brave viewers, to a story that will take you deep into impossible stairwells, endless corridors, and the presence of something that waits patiently just beyond perception. Tonight, we explore fear, survival, and the rules you must follow to endure the unimaginable. Hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you dare, because some horrors are patient and always watching. I had never paid much attention to the building across the street. It looked like any other gray Soviet-era block. Peeling paint, broken mailboxes, and that faint smell of damp concrete. But one evening, curiosity got the better of me. I needed to cut through the courtyard to save time, and that was when I noticed something strange about the entrance to the third stairwell. The heavy metal door stood wide open, creaking in the wind. A faint light glowed inside, dim and sickly yellow, like an old light bulb fighting to stay alive. I shouldn't have cared, but the thought nagged at me. Why was it open? Usually these doors were locked or at least shut tight. I stepped closer. The stairwell smelled stale, as if the air itself hadn't been disturbed in years. The sound of my footsteps echoed unnaturally, repeating longer than they should have, bouncing off unseen walls. It was unsettling, but also magnetic. Something inside pulled me in. I told myself I'd just peek in, just for a moment. That was all. The stairs rose up into shadow. The light above flickered once, twice, and then steadied. On the landing sat a shape. At first, I thought it was an old coat draped over a chair. But then it shifted, slowly, carefully, like something aware of me. I froze. My heart started to pound. The figure didn't move closer, didn't make a sound. It just sat there, its head tilted at an impossible angle, as if bones inside had snapped long ago. And yet, even from where I stood, I could feel its eyes on me. Don't notice him. The thought came into my head without warning. Clear, commanding, like someone had whispered it directly into my ear. My body obeyed before my mind had time to argue. I turned my gaze away, pretending to focus on the cracked walls, the stains on the floor, anything but the thing waiting on the stairs. I backed up a step. The door behind me should have been right there. I had only taken 2, maybe 3 steps inside. But when I reached back, my hand brushed against nothing but more cold concrete. I turned. The entrance was gone. In its place stretched another set of stairs, leading downward into shadows that seemed endless. My breath caught in my throat. My chest tightened. The way out had vanished, replaced by corridors that made no sense. The figure on the landing above had not moved, but I could feel its presence swelling, filling the stairwell like fog, pressing against me. Don't notice him, the voice came again. Louder this time, more urgent. So I lower my gaze to the ground, forcing my feet to move. Downward, toward the endless stairs. My own footsteps felt heavier now, echoing forever, as though the building itself was swallowing me whole. That was the first moment I realized this wasn't just a stairwell. This was a trap, and I had already stepped too far inside. The stairs seemed to stretch on forever. I descended step after step, my hand trailing along the rough wall to keep balance. The air grew colder with every level, heavy with the scent of dust and something metallic, like rust or blood. I couldn't tell which, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. There were no doors, no apartment numbers, no signs of life at all. Just flight after flight of concrete steps, each identical to the last. My legs began to ache, but when I glanced up, the landing I had left behind was already swallowed in darkness. The figure was gone, or maybe it was following me. I forced the thought away. The voice still lingered in my head, soft and steady, like a warning pulsing beneath my skull. Don't notice him. The more I tried to ignore it, the more it filled me. Who was him? The shape on the stairs? Or something deeper, waiting at the bottom of this endless descent? At some point, I noticed the lights had changed. No more yellow bulbs flickering overhead. Instead, there was a pale, bluish glow seeping from cracks in the concrete, as if the building itself had veins of ice running through it. Shadows moved where they shouldn't, bending against the light in ways that defied logic. Then, finally, I reached the door. It was metal, dented, painted a dull green that had peeled in long flakes. My heart leapt. An exit. My fingers fumbled at the handle, slick with sweat. I pulled. The door opened, but instead of fresh air, there was another corridor. This one stretched straight ahead, long and narrow, lined with more doors on either side. Each door looked identical, brown, scuffed, with tarnished peepholes. I hesitated, listening. From behind them came faint sounds, whispers, muffled sobbing, the scrape of furniture being dragged. Someone was in there. Many someones. I stepped inside. The metal door closed softly behind me, though I hadn't touched it. The whispers grew louder. I tried the first door. Locked. The second locked. But when I leaned close to the third, a voice hissed right against the other side of the wood. "Don't look at him." I staggered back, heart racing. The voice wasn't just in my head anymore. It was here surrounding me. The same warning, repeated again and again, leaking from the cracks under the doors, whispered in dozens of tones, male and female, young and old. "Don't look at him. Don't look at him. Don't look at him." The hallway pulsed with sound, an ocean of desperate pleas. My chest tightened. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then all the whispers stopped at once. Silence. I turned slowly, every muscle trembling. At the far end of the corridor, where the shadows seemed thickest, a figure stood. The same crooked head, the same stillness. Closer now, much closer. And this time, I couldn't pretend I hadn't noticed him. The figure didn't move, but the air around him warped, as if reality bent under his presence. My instinct screamed to run, but the hallway offered no escape. Only locked doors, each one watching me with its dull brass peephole. I forced my eyes down, fixing them on the cracked floor. My breath shook in my throat. The warning repeated in my mind like a mantra. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. But it was too late. I had seen. The corridor grew longer. Each step I took echoed unnaturally, stretching into an endless metallic clang. Behind me, the door I had entered was gone, erased like chalk wiped from a board. Now, there was only forward, toward the figure that waited. Then, without a sound, he vanished. I froze, every muscle rigid. My pulse hammered, waiting for the next movement. I scanned the corridor in quick, shallow breaths. Empty, empty, nothing. And then came the footsteps, soft, deliberate behind me. I didn't dare turn. My body locked up, but my ears caught every detail. The scrape of soles against concrete, the slow, uneven rhythm, closer with every second. The whispers returned too, leaking from the locked apartments, desperate, urgent. Don't look, don't notice, don't see. I clenched my fists. My survival instinct flared. I needed to do something. My hand shot to the nearest doorknob. I twisted hard. This time, it turned. I stumbled inside, slamming the door shut behind me. Darkness swallowed me whole. For a moment, I thought I had entered an abandoned flat, until my eyes adjusted. The walls were lined with mirrors, floor to ceiling, cracked and streaked, some warped with age, others so clean they reflected my trembling form too perfectly. I spun, searching for another exit, but all I saw was myself. 100 selves. Each mirror showed me standing there, pale and wide-eyed, except not all of them were the same. In one reflection, my mouth was twisted into a smile I wasn't making. In another, my eyes were hollow sockets. One showed me standing still while everything else in the room shifted, as though the reflection lived in a different time. And then, in the farthest corner of the mirror maze, he appeared. Not behind me, only in the glass. His crooked head, his stillness, his endless gaze. The mirrors shuddered, their surfaces rippling like water. His reflection spread from one mirror to the next, multiplying, surrounding me. My breath quickened. My chest heaved. If I moved, I feared they would all move with me. The voice returned. This time it wasn't in my head. It came from every reflection at once, layered, distorted. Don't notice him. But how could I not? He was everywhere. I staggered backward, colliding with the cold surface of a mirror. It rippled under my touch, soft as liquid. My hand sank through, and before I could pull away, the rest of me followed. The glass swallowed me whole. The sensation of falling lasted longer than it should have. Cold air rushed past me, but when I landed, there was no impact, only the weightless feeling of being suspended, as if the world itself had forgotten gravity. When I opened my eyes, I stood in another stairwell. Not the same one I had entered. This one was impossibly tall, its walls stretching into a void without ceiling or floor. The stairs spiraled upward and downward endlessly, glowing faintly with that same bluish light that seeped from the cracks in the concrete. And I wasn't alone. All along the stairwell, scattered across the steps, were people. Or rather, what was left of them. Some sat slumped against the railings, motionless. Others stood frozen mid-step, their faces blank, eyes glazed, as if their souls had been carved out. One of them turned his head toward me. Slowly, mechanically, his jaw opened. "Don't look at him." The voice was hollow, metallic, like a recording played through broken speakers. Then another body spoke, and another. Soon the stairwell pulsed with the same phrase, countless voices overlapping, all chanting in unison. "Don't look at him. Don't look at him. Don't look at him." I staggered backward, my heart slamming in my chest. The people didn't move closer. They didn't need to. Their words pressed in like invisible hands, filling the space until I could barely breathe. And then, just above me, I saw him. The crooked figure stood on the next landing, head bent at that same impossible angle, arms dangling at his sides. His presence silenced the chant in an instant. All the hollow people froze, their mouths snapping shut, as if someone had cut the power. I clutched the railing, forcing my gaze down at the steps. The air thickened, pressing against my skin, dragging goosebumps across every inch of me. The urge to look was overwhelming. Something primal inside me screamed to lift my head, to see his face, to understand what he was. My legs trembled as I climbed higher, tried past him. Each step creaked like it would collapse beneath me. My breath echoed too loudly. Halfway up, I slipped. My hand slammed against the railing, metal biting into my palm. The sound echoed, sharp and violent. And then I felt it. His attention. Even without looking, I knew he had turned toward me. The weight of his gaze sank into my skin, burning, pulling. My knees buckled under it. Every instinct told me to run. But where? Upward? Downward? Both stretched into infinity. There was no exit, no end. Only him. The whispers returned, softer now, almost pleading. "Don't notice him. Please, don't." I forced myself upright, every muscle screaming, and kept climbing. One step, then another. The figure didn't move. He only watched. Or maybe he didn't need to. Maybe noticing him once was enough. Finally, I reached the next landing. My hands shook as I fumbled for a door, any door. The handle gave way, and I hurled myself through. Darkness swallowed me again. But this time, when the lights flickered on, I was standing in a hallway I recognized. The same hallway of my own apartment building. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The wallpaper, faded beige with tiny flower patterns. The squeaky linoleum floor. Even a flickering bulb above apartment 42. This was my building. My hallway. Home. Relief flooded me so suddenly that my knees nearly gave out. But the relief didn't last. Everything was too quiet. No hum of televisions behind closed doors. No muffled arguments from neighbors. No smell of someone's cooking seeping through the cracks. The silence pressed against my ears, heavy and unnatural. I walked slowly, testing each step. The floor creaked louder than it ever had before, echoing endlessly down the hall. I tried my apartment door, fumbling with my keys. They slid in perfectly, but when I turned the lock, something resisted. It was as if the door itself had lungs, holding its breath, refusing to open. Then came a knock. Not on my door, on the one across from me. 3 sharp raps, steady, deliberate. I froze. Another knock. Louder. From farther down the hallway this time. Then another behind me. One by one, doors trembled under invisible fists, until the entire hall thundered with knocking from every direction. I clamped my hands over my ears. It didn't help. The sound wasn't just noise, it vibrated in my bones, shaking my ribs, crawling into my skull. And then it stopped. All the doors swung open at once. Darkness poured from them, thick and heavy like smoke. From within that darkness came whispers, the same words I had heard 100 times before. Don't look at him. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. My back hit the wall. The hall stretched longer, the doors multiplying endlessly in both directions. Each open doorway oozed shadow, and deep inside each one, shapes shifted. Faces half seen, eyes glowing faintly, watching. Then, at the very end of the hallway, he appeared again, head bent, body motionless, waiting. The shadows seemed to lean toward him, drawn by his presence. The whispers grew louder, frantic now, as if begging me to obey. Don't look, don't look, don't look. My gaze dropped to the floor, heart hammering. I pushed myself along the wall, inching toward my apartment door again. My keys were still in the lock, trembling from my shaking hands. I turned them. This time, the lock clicked. The door swung inward. I stumbled inside, slamming it behind me. But instead of my familiar apartment, I found myself standing in another stairwell. The same cracked walls, the same buzzing lights, the same endless descent into shadows. And on the landing above me, waiting with his crooked head, was the figure. My stomach dropped. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, the realization sank in. I hadn't escaped. I had only circled back into the trap. The stairwell stretched both upward and downward, the same pale glow leaking from cracks in the concrete. The air pressed against my chest like water, thick and heavy. My body screamed to run, but which way? Up meant closer to him. Down meant surrender to whatever waited below. I chose down. Step after step, I descended, gripping the railing until my knuckles ached. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the entire building were breathing, alive and aware of me. My mind filled with that single, suffocating thought, I will never get out. But then, another door. It was wooden this time, old and splintered with peeling white paint. Unlike the others, it stood half open, a thin slice of light spilling through. I didn't hesitate. I pushed it wide and stepped inside. The space beyond looked like a basement. Bare concrete floor, low ceiling, a single bulb swinging overhead. Boxes stacked against the walls, dust coating everything. For the first time since this nightmare began, the room looked normal. Too normal. I shut the door behind me, pressing my back to it, trying to steady my breath. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence was so deep that I heard my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Slowly, I began to believe I'd found refuge. Then I noticed the writing. Across the walls, scrawled in thick black strokes, were words repeated over and over. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. They covered every inch of concrete, overlapping until the letters blurred together. My stomach churned. Someone had been here before me. Many someones. And then, in the farthest corner of the basement, I saw a chair. A man sat in it, his head bowed, hands folded neatly in his lap. He didn't move, didn't even seem to breathe. His body was stiff, his skin pale, his clothes coated in dust. I whispered, barely audible, "Hello." His head twitched. Just once. The bulb above flickered violently. For a heartbeat, I saw the truth. The man's face was gone. Not torn away, just absent, as if it had never been there. Smooth skin stretched where features should have been. The light steadied. He was still motionless in the chair. And from the walls, from the endless words etched into concrete, came the whisper. Not imagined, not in my head, real, surrounding me. Don't notice him. My throat tightened. My legs begged me to run, but I couldn't tear my gaze from the faceless figure. It was as if gravity itself pinned me in place. The longer I stared, the more the air thickened, pressing into my lungs. Finally, with every ounce of strength, I staggered toward the door. My hand shook as I pulled it open. On the other side was not the stairwell. It was the corridor of doors again. Long, narrow, infinite. Each door trembling as though something clawed to be let out. And at the far end, barely visible in the shadows, the crooked figure waited. The corridor stretched ahead like a wound in the world, every door shuddering in its frame as if some unseen thing pressed against it from within. My pulse hammered in my ears, yet the silence was absolute. No whispers this time, no warnings, only the stillness of a nightmare waiting to breathe. At the far end, he stood, crooked head, limp arms, frozen posture. Always the same, yet somehow heavier with each encounter, like his presence grew stronger every time I noticed him. I lower my gaze, staring at the cracked floorboards. My instinct screamed to turn back, but when I glanced behind me, the basement door was gone. Only more hallways stretched endlessly in both directions. I had no choice but forward. The doors rattled harder as I passed. From behind one came the scrape of nails on wood. Another rattled so violently it seemed ready to tear off its hinges. My steps quickened, though I fought to keep my eyes low. Then a voice spoke. From the door to my left, soft and desperate. "Help me." I froze. The voice was human, weak but alive. I pressed my ear to the door, breath trembling. "Please," the voice whispered again. "Don't leave me here." My hand brushed the handle. It turned easily. Unlike before, this door wanted to open. I hesitated. Every instinct told me it was a trap. But what if it wasn't? What if someone else was trapped here like me? I pushed the door open. The room beyond was pitch black. A smell of rot seeped out, thick and suffocating. I leaned closer, trying to see. A hand shot out, pale, thin fingers clutching my wrist with bone-crushing strength. I screamed, yanking back. The hand pulled harder, dragging me toward the darkness. I stumbled against the frame, fighting, clawing at the wood. For a moment, I thought I would be pulled inside. Then the door slammed shut on its own, nearly crushing my fingers. The grip vanished. I stumbled backward, gasping for air. My wrist burned where the fingers had dug into flesh. And from every door in the corridor, voices erupted all at once. "Help me! Help me! Help me!" The chorus was deafening, overlapping, pleading. My head spun. My knees buckled. At the far end, the crooked figure hadn't moved, but the sound seemed to belong to him, as though the voices were spilling from his silent mouth. I forced my body forward, step after shaking step. The voices grew louder, more frenzied, until they became screams. My ears rang with the noise, tears stinging my eyes. Finally, I reached the last door, just before where the figure stood. My hands fumbled at the handle. Locked. I pulled harder, desperate, pounding against the wood. The screams stopped. Silence fell like a blade. Slowly, I raised my eyes. He was gone. The corridor was empty, but the air was heavier than ever, crushing me from all sides. My skin prickled with the certainty that he hadn't disappeared, only moved closer. I pressed myself flat against the door, shaking, whispering to no one, "Please, just let me out." And then, with a soft click, the lock gave way. I stumbled inside, slamming the door shut behind me. This time, I was standing in my own bedroom. My bedroom. For a moment, I thought it was really over. The familiar sight of my desk, my unmade bed, the pile of clothes on the chair. It all hit me with such force that I nearly collapsed. I pressed my palms to my face, whispering to myself, "It's done. It's done. I'm home." But something was wrong. The air didn't smell like my apartment. It was too cold, too sterile, with a faint metallic tang that burned my nose. My window was there, but beyond the glass there was no city street, no lights from the building across the way. Only darkness. A darkness so deep it looked solid, like tar pressing against the glass. I backed toward the door, heart racing. My hands trembled as I reached for the knob. That was when I noticed the mirror. It shouldn't have been there. I didn't own a mirror that size. It stood against the wall opposite my bed, tall and narrow, framed in tarnished silver. The glass shimmered faintly, as though it were alive. And in its reflection, I wasn't alone. He stood behind me, crooked head, bent neck, still as death. I spun around. The room was empty. My breath caught in my throat. I turned back to the mirror. He was still there, closer now, his warped figure filling the reflection. The whispers rose again, not from the walls this time, but from the mirror itself, vibrating in my bones. "Don't notice him." I stumbled backward, eyes locked on the glass. My reflection shuddered, as though it were a different version of me, trapped behind the surface, desperate to get out. Its lips moved silently, words I couldn't hear, face twisted with terror. Then, without warning, the reflection smiled. Not me. Him. The crooked figure's head bent further. bones cracking audibly inside the mirror. His face, if it could be called a face, slid closer to the glass, pressing against it from the other side. The surface rippled. I grabbed the doorknob, wrenching it open. My bedroom vanished. I was back in the stairwell. The endless gray steps stretched both up and down. The buzzing lights flickered overhead. And on the landing above me, waiting with the patience of eternity, stood the crooked figure. But this time I wasn't alone. Scattered across the steps were people, dozens of them. Some I recognized from the hollow bodies I had seen before. Others were strangers. They sat slumped, stood frozen, or paced aimlessly, whispering to themselves. Their eyes were dull, their mouths repeating the same phrase over and over. "Don't look at him. Don't look at him. Don't look at him." Their voices overlapped, a tide of hopelessness. And then I understood. These weren't ghosts. They weren't illusions. There were people who had entered this place before me, trapped, caught in the same loop, repeating the same warning forever. My chest tightened. My legs shook. If I stayed, I would become one of them. I gripped the railing, forcing myself to move. I would not sit down. I would not join their endless chant. I would find a way out, even if it meant climbing past him. One step at a time, I began to ascend. Each step upward felt heavier than the last. The air grew colder, thicker, as if the building itself resisted my escape. The buzzing lights above flickered violently, casting long, jagged shadows across the walls. Every echo of my footsteps multiplied, as though dozens of invisible beings were climbing alongside me. He was waiting. The crooked figure stood on the landing above, perfectly still. His presence was oppressive, a physical weight that pressed down from above. I refused to meet his gaze. I forced my eyes down to the steps, counting them, clinging to the rhythm as a lifeline. The whispers followed. Not in my head this time. They came from the walls, the ceiling, the floor itself. "Don't look. Don't see. Don't notice him." I stumbled. My knee hit the cold concrete. Pain shot up my leg, but I couldn't stop. Each movement drew me closer to him, yet I had no choice. Stopping meant surrender. The hallway beyond the landing stretched unnaturally. I climbed onto it, every muscle screaming. The steps beneath me warped, bending into impossible angles. Doors appeared where there had been none. Windows opened onto voids instead of city streets. My mind reeled. A sudden noise made me freeze. Metal scraping on metal, faint at first, then louder. The sound came from the landing above, just behind him. He hadn't moved, but the scraping suggested otherwise. Something or someone was behind him. I risked a glance. The landing above was empty, except for the crooked figure. And yet, shadows moved behind him, writhing, stretching as though reaching for me. I jerked my eyes away, reminding myself of the mantra, "Don't notice him." The steps shifted beneath my feet. One moment solid, the next hollow. I nearly fell, catching myself on the railing. My palms burned. My breath came in shallow gasps. And then I saw a door. Small, almost hidden, pressed against the far wall. A faint glow leaked from beneath. Hope surged through me. Maybe finally a way out. I ran. Each step brought him closer, though he hadn't moved. I didn't look up, focusing only on the door. My fingers slammed into the handle. Cold, smooth, real. I twisted. It opened. A blast of air hit me. Light, warmth. The smell of the outside world, concrete, wet grass, night air. Relief crashed over me like a wave. I stepped through. The door closed behind me. I dared to look back. Nothing. No stairs. No corridors. No crooked figure. Only the quiet street outside, dimly lit by the amber glow of streetlights. My building stood before me, normal, as though nothing had happened. For a long moment, I simply stood there, trembling, listening to the ordinary sounds of the night. A car passing, distant laughter, the rustle of leaves in the wind. I had escaped, but the memory lingered. The warning, the figures, the endless stairs. And every time I close my eyes, I feel it, the pull, the weight, the voice echoing in my mind. Don't notice him. I shiver, because I know one thing for certain, the building still waits. Days passed, but the memory of the stairwell never faded. I try to go about my life, to pretend everything was normal. I returned to work, to the cafe where I spent hours behind the counter, the familiar hum of conversation and the clatter of cups providing a thin layer of comfort. But every time I closed my eyes, the image returned. The crooked figure, the endless stares, the whispering voices. Don't notice him. I told myself it was a dream, a hallucination born from exhaustion or stress. But then the dreams came at night, vivid, unrelenting. I would wake up in my apartment, the glow of the city outside my window, only to find the shadows moving differently than they should. The air would grow heavy, a faint hum like buzzing lights underground. And for a heartbeat, I would see him in the reflection of my window, crooked, motionless, watching. I started avoiding mirrors. Every reflective surface became a threat. Windows, polished tables, even spoons. I would catch myself staring into the glass, heart pounding, only to force my eyes away, repeating the mantra, "Don't notice him." People around me noticed changes. Friends asked if I was okay, if I'd been sleeping. I lied, laughed, said I was fine. But the truth was I never felt safe again. One evening, I returned home later than usual. The street was quiet, too quiet. I approached my building, keys in hand, breath visible in the cold night air. The front door opened with a familiar creak. I paused. The smell of the building was different, stale, heavy. My heart raced. I told myself it was imagination. I stepped inside. The stairwell looked normal at first. I climbed cautiously to my floor, trying to ignore the echoes of my own footsteps. But when I reached the landing, I froze. The hallway stretched farther than it should have. The walls were darker, the air thicker. The doors to apartments were all slightly ajar, and at the far end, barely visible in the shadows. He stood there, crooked head, arms dangling, as if waiting for me. My mind screamed, "It can't be real." I escaped. I left, but the voice returned, soft and insidious, threading through my thoughts like smoke. "Don't notice him." I blinked. The hallway flickered. One moment, it was my normal hallway. The next, it stretched into infinity, doors multiplying endlessly. Panic surged through me, but I forced my legs to move. I had to get to my apartment. My keys burned in my hand. Step by step, I advanced, refusing to look. The figure didn't move, yet I could feel him closer with every stride. The whispers returned, coming from every direction, overlapping, urgent. "Don't look. Don't see. Don't notice him." Finally, I reached my apartment door. My hand trembled as I slid the key in. I turned it, and the lock clicked. Relief washed over me. I stepped inside, slamming the door behind me. For a moment, I thought I was safe. But the mirror in the corner reflected more than my own trembling form. The faint shimmer of his presence lingered, just at the edge of perception. Not fully visible, but there, always watching, waiting. And I knew, no matter how far I ran, no matter how many times I tried to convince myself it was over, the stairwell was never gone. It was still there, waiting for the next time I, or someone else, entered its doors. "Don't notice him," it whispered, the words threading into my dreams, my thoughts, my life. I shivered, because I understood now. Some places never let go, and some things never stop waiting. Sleep became a battleground. Every night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it. The pull, the whisper, the impossible presence of the stairwell creeping into my room. Shadows shifted in the corners, the familiar dim glow appearing behind closed eyes. Even in my own apartment, the world felt fragile, unreal, as if one misstep would open a door I wasn't ready for. I started leaving lights on, hoping illumination could push the darkness away. I checked mirrors obsessively, turning small hand mirrors face down whenever possible. Every reflective surface became a threat, every corner a potential window into the infinite stairwell. Work became nearly impossible. Conversations blurred into static as my mind tracked the shadows at the edges of perception. One coworker's laugh sounded distorted. Another's footsteps echoed unnaturally. I began wearing sunglasses indoors, though no one understood why. One morning, I returned home from a long, sleepless night. I reached for my keys. The front door of the building opened, as usual. Everything seemed normal, until I reached the stairwell. It wasn't the endless stairs, at least not fully. The landing appeared familiar, yet somehow wrong. The walls were darker, the linoleum too smooth, the echoes sharper. Every door seemed slightly off, misaligned. The building felt alive in a way that made my skin crawl. I froze halfway up the stairs. A shadow moved at the far end of the landing. I didn't look directly at it. I couldn't, but I felt it, cautious, deliberate, watching. The voice threaded through my mind. Don't notice him. I moved carefully, keeping my gaze low, clinging to the railing. But then, something unexpected happened. A door at the end of the landing opened on its own. Light spilled into the hallway, warm and inviting. It wasn't the cold blue glow of the stairwell. For the first time, I felt a twinge of hope. I approached cautiously. The door revealed a room unlike anything I had seen inside the building before. It looked ordinary, furnished with a small table, a chair, a window that framed the city outside. There was a warmth in the air, a faint smell of coffee and paper, like someone had been living here. And on the table, a notebook lay open. Its pages were filled with scribbled handwriting. The same warning I had heard countless times. Don't notice him. But below that, a new line appeared, different from the others. You survived. Keep moving. Don't stop. Don't linger. I felt my heart surge. Someone else had been here. Someone else had found a way to resist. Before I could linger, I noticed a small trapdoor under the table. Its hinges were old, rusted, but it opened easily. A faint light emanated from below, pulsing gently, inviting. I knew instinctively this was another escape route. My hand shook as I lowered myself into the unknown. The stairwell faded behind me. For a moment, the oppressive weight lifted, but the echo of his presence remained. Crooked head, silent, patient, waiting. The trapdoor led to a narrow tunnel, damp and smelling of earth and rust. My hands scraped against the rough concrete walls as I crawled forward. Every sound was amplified. The drip of water somewhere above, my own ragged breathing, the faint scrape of my clothing against the floor. The light ahead pulsed gently, drawing me forward. I could feel the weight of the building above me, pressing down, as if aware of my presence. The whispers were gone, strangely absent. For the first time, silence stretched before me like a fragile promise. I moved cautiously, pausing at every turn. The tunnel twisted unnaturally, angles bending in ways my mind didn't fully comprehend. At one bend, the floor sloped steeply upward. I climbed, gripping the walls, until I reached a small chamber. It was empty, save for a single chair in the center. Dust covered the seat, yet something about it felt alive. I approached, and the air grew colder instantly. A faint whisper slid into my mind. Don't sit. Don't linger. I obeyed instinctively, stepping back. The chamber stretched endlessly in all directions, walls rippling faintly, like liquid concrete. A corridor of doors appeared, shimmering just beyond the edge of perception. Each door pulsed with that familiar blue glow, the stairwell signature. I realized with a jolt that this tunnel wasn't outside the stairwell. It was inside it, hidden beneath the building, part of the same impossible architecture. I swallowed hard. My heartbeat pounded. I had escaped the visible stairwell, yet here I was, still within its grasp. A sound echoed from behind me. Footsteps, light, deliberate, moving closer. I froze, eyes scanning the chamber, but there was nothing, no crooked figure, no shadow. Yet the air itself felt tense, like a hell breath. Then I noticed the walls, scratches. Hundreds of them, deep and jagged, etched as if by fingernails. Some formed letters, others were abstract, jagged patterns that seemed to writhe when I looked too long. Among them, I discerned a message. Keep moving. He waits if you stop. My skin prickled. The warnings weren't just in my mind. They were etched into reality. I pressed on, following the pulsing light, crawling through narrow gaps, climbing over broken sections of concrete. The tunnel split into multiple passages, twisting like a labyrinth. One path led downward, dark and foreboding. Another led upward, faintly lit. I chose upward. The passage widened, opening into a small room with a single window. Through it, I glimpsed the city lights far below. For a moment, hope surged. Escape. Finally. But then, a faint reflection in the glass caught my eye. He was there, crooked head, arms dangling, hovering behind the glass. Not entirely visible, as if only part of him existed in this world. My stomach churned. The whispers returned, soft but insistent. Don't notice him. I averted my gaze and forced myself forward, crawling toward the next opening. The chamber seemed to stretch infinitely now, twisting into impossible angles. Every step forward felt like a battle against gravity itself. And still, he waited. The passage narrowed again, forcing me to crawl on my hands and knees. Every scrape of my palms against the rough concrete echoed unnaturally, multiplying into dozens of phantom sounds. The walls were alive with scratches, some fresh, others long faded. Each mark told a story of fear, struggle, and failed escape attempts. A faint light shimmered ahead. I crawled faster, hope flaring in my chest. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I imagined the possibility of leaving the stairwell behind. Maybe, just maybe, I could escape this nightmare completely. But as I reached the source of the light, the tunnel twisted sharply, and I stumbled into a chamber. It was larger than any space I had encountered so far, high ceilings disappearing into shadows. The walls were lined with mirrors, tall, floor-to-ceiling, jagged, warped. Each reflected the tunnel in impossible ways, stretching and bending, multiplying endlessly. And then I saw him. Not directly, not fully, but in the mirrors, crooked head, unmoving, watching me. He was everywhere at once, reflections bouncing infinitely across the surfaces. My stomach turned. My heart pounded violently. I stepped back. The floor beneath me groaned, a deep, resonating sound that seemed alive. Shadows moved along the walls, creeping closer, responding to my fear. The whispers returned, soft and urgent, threading into my mind. Don't notice him. Don't look at him. I forced myself to ignore them, forcing my eyes to the ground. I crept along the edge of the chamber, searching for an exit. A faint crack of light appeared at the far end, almost imperceptible, but enough to guide me forward. As I approached, the mirrors rippled slightly, and I caught fleeting glimpses of people, trapped, hollow-eyed, wandering endlessly in the reflections. Some tried to reach me, their hands pressing against the glass, lips moving silently. I swallowed hard. Their presence sent a shiver down my spine. They weren't real, at least not fully, but their fear was tangible, infecting the air. I passed the last mirror and found a narrow corridor, walls coated with layers of dust and grime. The pulsing blue glow returned faintly from cracks above. I moved cautiously, listening. The whispers had quieted, but a new sound emerged, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails on stone. I froze. My stomach churned. The sound grew louder, closer, until I realized it wasn't random. It matched the rhythm of my own heartbeat. Every tap, every echo, synchronized with me, as if the building itself monitored my fear. I pressed forward, ignoring the sound. One step at a time. The corridor twisted, spiraled, dropped suddenly, and then opened into a chamber that made me stop dead in my tracks. It was a room entirely empty, except for a single staircase. Gray concrete, leading straight upward. No walls, no ceilings, just the stairs suspended in a void of black nothingness. And at the top, just beyond reach, I saw it light. Freedom. I shivered, unsure whether to run or pray. Every instinct screamed to ascend. But deep down, I knew he was waiting, and he always waits. The staircase seemed impossibly steep, stretching into darkness above me. Each step was rough under my palms as I climbed, my fingers scraping the concrete. The blue glow from cracks below faded, leaving me in a void of black nothingness, broken only by the faint light at the top. I kept my gaze downward, forcing myself to ignore the pull of the darkness around me. The whispers returned, soft, urgent, insistent. Don't look at him. Don't notice him. My muscles ached. My arms trembled as I hoisted myself upward, step by step. Every so often, I felt a presence beside me, just a shadow, a sense of weight, but when I dared to glance, nothing was there. Still, the feeling of being watched was suffocating. Halfway up, the stairwell changed. The concrete became slick, almost organic, and the walls seemed to pulse faintly with light, like veins. Shadows shifted, taking forms that twisted and writhed, reaching for me. I gritted my teeth and pressed onward. The figure appeared. Crooked head, arms dangling, standing on a landing that shouldn't exist. I didn't look directly at him, but the knowledge of his presence made my heart pound. He didn't move, yet I felt him closing the distance with every step I took. I forced myself higher. The whispers merged with the sound of my own heartbeat, creating a deafening rhythm. My breath came in ragged gasps. I wanted to stop, to collapse, to surrender, but the small light above promised escape. As I climbed, the void stretched endlessly around me. Steps bent impossibly, some disappearing only to reappear above or below. I stumbled, catching myself on railings that twisted under my grip. My mind screamed, "This isn't real. It can't be real." Then I felt a hand brush against my shoulder. Cold, solid. I spun around, but nothing was there. The darkness closed in, a suffocating mass, and the whispers grew louder, chanting, "Don't look. Don't see. Don't notice him." I forced my gaze forward toward the light. It pulsed gently, beckoning me, safe yet impossibly far. Step after step, I climbed. The void below seemed to stretch infinitely, the shadows growing taller, more defined, as if feeding off my fear. Halfway to the light, I stumbled. My hands scraped the rough concrete. Pain shot through my fingers, but I didn't stop. The figure appeared again, closer this time, his crooked head tilted in that impossible angle. I didn't look directly at him. I forced my eyes to the steps, counting each one, every movement a battle against panic. And then I heard it, a voice clear, distinct, but not from him, from the shadows around me. "Keep going." I froze. The voice was human, calm, urging. I looked briefly and saw a figure, faint and distant, just at the edge of perception. It pointed toward the light. A guide? Or another trap? I didn't care. Hope flared, stronger than fear. I moved. Step by step, my exhaustion battling my fear, I climbed. The staircase shuddered beneath me. Shadows writhed. The whispers rose to a crescendo. And still, the light beckoned just above reach. My arms trembled violently. Every step felt like lifting a ton of lead, yet the light above grew brighter, warmer, tangible. I forced my gaze forward, ignoring the shadows curling around the staircase, whispering my name, tugging at my ankles, trying to pull me down. The crooked figure appeared again. This time, he didn't stand on a landing. He floated above the steps, his body unnaturally elongated, bending the very air around him. The moment I realized I could see him without looking directly, panic surged through me. His head twisted impossibly, snapping toward my peripheral vision. The whispers returned, now insistent, chanting, overlapping. "Don't notice him. Don't notice him. Don't notice him." I forced myself to breathe, counting in my head. One step, one step. The human voice returned from shadows. Calm, insistent. "Don't stop. You can make it." I had no idea who it was, or if it was real, but I clung to it like a lifeline. My fingers scraped against the rough concrete. My legs burned, but I pushed onward. Step by agonizing step, I approached the light. Then the stairs shifted beneath me. Concrete buckled and twisted, creating gaps that threatened to drop me into the infinite void below. Shadows reached higher now, clawing at my sleeves, brushing my skin with icy fingers. I stumbled, nearly falling, but I clawed back on the steps. The figure moved closer, though he hadn't stepped. I could feel his weight in the air, his presence pressing against me like a physical hand. My eyes burned with the effort to avoid looking directly at him. Another step, another. The light was closer. My hope flared, but so did the dread. A sound echoed from behind, the scraping, metallic, relentless. It wasn't whispers this time, but footsteps echoing my own. Or was it him following? My pulse raced. The human voice whispered again, "Almost there. Don't stop. Keep moving." I forced my trembling legs to climb. Pain shot through every joint. My lungs burned. The shadows hissed, reaching, stretching. The figure's crooked head twisted slightly, as if sensing my defiance. Another step. The light enveloped me now, spilling warmth over my skin. I could see it clearly, a soft, golden glow cutting through the void, beckoning me. My heart surged, but the shadows shrieked, lashing out, twisting the staircase, warping steps into jagged spikes. I slipped, my hands scraping the concrete. Pain radiated, but the voice urged me on. I rose, step by step, closer, and then I was there, the top of the staircase. The light wasn't just ahead, it was around me. Warmth, air, the faint hum of the real world. I took a final step, and the staircase vanished. The void fell away beneath me. I stumbled forward, my body shaking, and fell into reality. The street stretched before me, quiet, normal. The city lights shimmered in the distance. My apartment building loomed behind, ordinary, mundane. For the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed. I was free, or so I thought. The relief of being back in the real world was intoxicating. I sank onto the curb, lungs heaving, letting the cool night air fill my lungs. For a moment, everything seemed ordinary. Cars passed, distant chatter floated through the streets, the faint smell of rain on asphalt. But the memory of the stairwell refused to fade. Every shadow, every flicker of light seemed to stretch unnaturally, reminding me of the figure waiting, always waiting. My mind screamed for calm, for reason, but the terror clung to me like a second skin. I returned to my apartment, slamming the door behind me. The familiar smell of home should have comforted me, yet every reflective surface made me flinch. Mirrors, windows, even the black screen of my television. Everything felt like a potential doorway back into the nightmare. Sleep offered no refuge. Every night, I dreamed of the stairwell. Endless steps, impossibly twisting, the crooked figure standing somewhere, waiting, patient. Whispers followed me into dreams, threading through my thoughts. Don't notice him. By day, the world seemed slightly off. Shadows lingered too long. Corners were too dark, and reflections occasionally revealed shapes that shouldn't exist. I caught glimpses of him in fleeting reflections, crooked head, silent, patient, always at the edge of perception. I tried to distract myself. Work, friends, television, anything to anchor me in the mundane. But normalcy was fragile. The stairwell had changed me. My mind had learned patterns it shouldn't have. I could feel the pull of that impossible place even here in reality. Then it started to reach through objects. Small things, faint shadows moving against the grain of wood, reflections bending unnaturally, lights flickering with no power outage. I would pass a window and for a heartbeat see him standing behind me in the glass, only to spin and find nothing there. I avoided mirrors, windows, shiny surfaces. But the presence persisted. He didn't need to step into reality fully. Just the thought of him, the knowledge that he waited, was enough to twist my perception. The whispers grew more invasive, not just in dreams, but in waking moments. I would hear fragments of them while walking the streets, in the hum of fluorescent lights and the static of my headphones. Don't notice him. Don't look. Don't see. I realized with chilling clarity. Escaping the stairwell hadn't freed me. It had brought me into the next phase, where the figure followed me, patient, undying, entwined with the very fabric of my life. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, that fear had planted hallucinations in my mind. But deep down, I knew the truth. Some things cannot be left behind. Some places leave traces on you, invisible and inescapable. And some figures never stop waiting. Days blurred into nights. Every moment carried the weight of being watched. I began keeping a journal, writing every detail of the stairwell, the tunnels, the corridors, the figure, the whispers. Perhaps documenting it would help me make sense of it, or at least preserve a thread of reality to cling to. I scoured books on architecture, the occult, urban legends. Anything that could explain impossible spaces hidden within buildings, invisible layers of reality that trap people. But every source contradicted the other, some calling it a psychological phenomenon, others hinting at cursed spaces, places that feed on fear. And yet, the figure was real. I had felt him, heard him, seen him in reflections. My mind refused to deny it. I started experimenting. Mirrors covered, windows blacked out, lights constantly on. I tried to stay in motion, never lingering in one room, refusing to sit or sleep too long in the same place. He followed anyway, patient, silent, unrelenting. One night, desperate, I whispered into the darkness of my apartment, "Why are you here? What do you want?" The response wasn't a voice. It was a shift in the room. Shadows lengthened, wrapping along the corners, forming shapes just beyond comprehension. The whisper came, clear my mind. "I wait. You know this place. You saw it. You carry it now." I recoiled, heart pounding. That was the moment I understood fully. The stairwell, the corridors, the tunnels, they were part of a system, and I had become a node within it. Escape was temporary. The building's reach followed anyone who had walked its stairs. I needed answers. I couldn't just hide forever. Research led me to old city records, forgotten blueprints. I discovered something remarkable. The building I lived in was built over foundations older than the city itself. Sublevels had been filled in, corridors sealed, rooms abandoned and forgotten. Layers of construction atop one another, some documented, others erased. It explained part of it. The stairwell wasn't just a building. It was a labyrinth of hidden spaces, corridors that existed partially in reality, partially in some other dimension, a pocket of impossibility. And he, the figure, was the guardian, the patient observer of anyone who ventured inside and knew the secrets. I realized the grim truth. I could never entirely leave. But perhaps if I understood the rules, I could survive. I could avoid noticing him, avoid engaging, stay in motion, the same way I had survived before. And so I began mapping. Every reflection, every shadow, every subtle distortion of reality became a point of reference, a strategy. Survival meant patience, constant vigilance, and refusing to look. But the deeper I delved into the knowledge, the clearer it became. The stairwell and the figure weren't just outside. They were now inside me, interwoven with perception itself. No wall, no floor, no ceiling could contain them. The figure would wait forever, and I would carry the memory, the fear, the warnings for the rest of my life. I learned to live in fragments, dividing my day into measured movements, each step calculated, each reflection avoided. Mirrors were covered, windows blocked, shiny surfaces avoided. I kept my apartment illuminated at all times, relying on artificial light to hold back the creeping darkness that clung to the edges of perception. Every sound was amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft thump of my own heartbeat, the distant echo of traffic outside. I became hyper-aware, constantly scanning shadows, listening for whispers, noting the subtle distortions in reality. The figure was always at the edge, always patient, waiting. I left notes everywhere, small reminders, don't look, don't notice him. They became mantras, helping me resist the instinct to glance into reflective surfaces. My journal became more than documentation. It became a lifeline, a record of what was and what to avoid. I try to maintain a semblance of normalcy. I went to work, I ate, I showered. But every step, every routine carried the weight of constant vigilance. I avoided going out after dark. If I walked the streets, I kept my gaze downward, never letting peripheral vision catch anomalies. Sleep remained my greatest enemy. Dreams became extensions of the stairwell. Endless steps, corridors, tunnels, the figure appearing, always watching, always patient. Whispers threaded through dreams, looping. Don't notice him. Don't see. Don't look. One night, desperation overtook me. I decided to confront the phenomenon in my dreams. I forced myself to enter the stairwell, walking the corridors of my subconscious with deliberate intent. The figure appeared, as always, crooked and silent, waiting. But this time I did not look directly. I skirted the edges, mapping the impossible spaces, observing without recognition. The whispers became louder, angry, urgent, but I kept moving step after step until I reached a chamber I had never seen. It was empty, save for a faint golden light emanating from a small crack in the wall. I approached cautiously, and for a moment, hope flared. I could escape, at least temporarily, even in dreams. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. But for the first time, I felt a small measure of control. I realized that survival wasn't about defeating the figure or leaving the stairwell forever. It was about navigation, about understanding the rules, about refusing to notice him. Day by day, I refined my strategies. Avoidance became instinct. Motion became rhythm. Reflection became enemy. Yet always the figure lingered, patient, ever present. And I understood, with a clarity that chilled me to the bone, that this was my life now. The stairwell had not ended. It had simply moved, and I would carry it with me, always in every shadow, every mirror, every faintly glowing light at the edge of perception. The intrusion into my daily life became unavoidable. Small things, misplaced objects, subtle distortions in furniture, faint movements in the corner of my vision, reminded me constantly that the stairwell and its guardian had followed me. I would pass a window and for a heartbeat see the crooked figure standing behind me in the glass, only for it to vanish when I spun around. Even in public, I felt it. Crowds blurred into shadows. Reflections doubled and twisted. I couldn't trust my eyes. Peripheral vision became a trap. My mind hyper-aware, every movement analyzed for signs of impossibility. Sleep remained a battlefield. Nightmares weren't just dreams. They were excursions into the labyrinth, the figure waiting, patient, silent, corners and corridors stretching endlessly. The whispers continued, now echoing in waking moments. Don't notice him. Don't look. Don't see. I tried grounding techniques, touching objects, focusing on sensations, but the stairwell's influence was insidious. It threaded into my perception, overlaying the world with impossible geometry, shadows that weren't shadows, reflections that weren't reflections. Work became increasingly difficult. I stopped making eye contact, avoided mirrors in the bathroom, refused to look at reflective surfaces on my desk. Colleagues noticed my distraction, my paranoia, my sudden flinches when light caught an angle wrong. I lied, smiled, muttered excuses, but no one could understand the constant tension, the vigilance that consumed every second. I began experimenting further. If I moved slowly, carefully, did not linger, did not observe shadows too closely, I could navigate even the most distorted spaces without incident. The figure didn't approach when I didn't look, didn't act when I refused recognition. Avoidance became a form of protection. But one evening, the boundary weakened. A streetlight flickered, and in its uneven glow, I caught the faintest glimpse. The crooked head, the impossible angle, just beyond my peripheral vision. My stomach dropped. Every muscle tensed. I forced myself to continue walking, focusing only on the path ahead. The whispers came, overlapping the hum of the city. Don't notice him. I understood now. The figure did not need to interact directly. Awareness alone was the danger. Recognition was the trigger. If I maintained vigilance, if I avoided noticing, I could survive. But one lapse, one glance, one moment of distraction, and the stairwell's reach would claim me. And so, I moved carefully. I learned routes, memorized angles, avoided reflections, manipulated light. My world contracted, but I survived. Each day, each step, a battle of perception, endurance, and fear. The figure waited, patient, silent, eternal, and I walked onward, knowing full well that the stairwell and its guardian had become an inseparable part of my life. Years passed, though they felt like endless cycles of vigilance and fear. I had learned to navigate my world with precision, to treat every shadow and reflection as a potential doorway into the stairwell. Avoidance had become instinct. Motion had become rhythm. Awareness was survival. I rarely slept, and when I did, it was under strict conditions. Constant light, no mirrors, eyes tightly closed. Dreams remained excursions into the labyrinth, but I had grown better at moving without recognition, skirting the figure, following the same strategies I used in waking life. Still, the intrusions intensified occasionally. A mirror reflected a shape I hadn't seen before. A window shimmered with impossible angles. The whispers, though diminished in volume, would rise like a tide, threading into my mind. Don't notice him. Don't look. Don't see. One night, I confronted the sensation directly. I sat in my apartment, lights low but steady, and whispered aloud, I will not give you power over me. I will not see you. I will not acknowledge you. The air grew heavy. Shadows pressed along the edges of my vision. The figure's presence pulsed at the periphery, crooked head tilting, silent. But I did not look. I did not falter. Step by step, breath by breath, I held my awareness steady, refusing recognition. Time stretched. The shadows receded slightly. The whispers softened, indistinct now. I realized, perhaps for the first time, that understanding the rules, the patterns, the rhythm, the vigilance, gave me a measure of control. I could coexist with the figure. I could survive without surrendering entirely to fear. Life became a delicate balance. I left lights on, avoided reflective surfaces, moved carefully through both physical and psychological spaces. Every step, every glance calculated. And yet I was alive, free to breathe, to walk the streets, to exist in a world that, despite distortions and intrusions, was still mine. The figure remained, patient, silent, eternal, waiting, a constant reminder that some spaces leave traces, that some presences cannot be escaped. But I had learned the rules. I had learned to survive. I walked forward each day, eyes vigilant, mind alert, never giving him recognition. In that fragile balance, I discovered a kind of freedom, the freedom to live, even under the shadow of impossibility. The stairwell had followed me into life, but it had not taken me completely. And perhaps that was enough. Morning light filtered through my curtains, ordinary and golden. For the first time in years, I let myself sit still, listening to the city awake outside. The hum of life, the distant car horns, the chatter of neighbors, all of it felt real, solid, untouchable by the stairwell. Yet I knew the truth. The figure was still there, lurking in the edges of perception, patient and eternal. I didn't see him, not directly. I didn't need to. I carried the memory, the warnings, the knowledge of the labyrinth within me. Awareness alone was enough to keep him at bay. I moved through my apartment with habitual caution, blinds partially closed, mirrors covered, lights softly glowing. Each step, each glance calculated. The rules were ingrained, second nature. I had become part navigator, part guardian of my own mind, surviving by maintaining vigilance. And still, there were moments when I felt the pull, the faint tug of impossible angles, the soft whisper threading through thought. Don't notice him. My stomach tightened. My pulse surged. The figure remained, patient, waiting for a lapse. I accepted it, not as surrender, but as coexistence. Some forces cannot be destroyed. Some spaces, some beings, leave permanent marks. I had seen the stairwell, its endless steps, its impossible architecture. I had faced the figure and survived. I had learned the rules. Outside, life went on. Children ran past my window. Laughter carried on the wind. The world was full of ordinary, tangible things. I could touch them, smell them, feel them. That reality was mine to inhabit, as long as I remembered the vigilance, the rhythm, the avoidance. The figure would wait forever, and the stairwell would stretch in hidden spaces beneath buildings, beneath streets, beyond perception. But I had survived its reach. I had walked its steps, outrun its patience, endured its impossibilities. And I would continue to live, aware, careful, alive. Because some horrors do not end, but some survivors endure. I rose from my chair, stretching stiff muscles, letting the morning light wash over me. I moved through the apartment, avoiding reflections, counting my steps, listening to the world. The figure was patient. the stairwell eternal. But I was still here. And that was enough.